Today, we will be centering around the mysterious murder of Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia. But before we dive into this incredible mystery that became highly publicized owing to the gruesome nature of the crime, let's take some time to delve into who this mysterious woman was. Elizabeth Short was born in Hyde Park, Massachusetts on July 29, 1924. She was the middle child of 5 daughters. When she was 2 years old, the family moved to a town called Medford, known as one of the oldest settlements in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. When she was just 5 years old, Elizabeth's father, Cleo Short, disappeared. They found his car near a lake, apparently abandoned, leading many to believe that he had committed suicide. However, he later wrote the family, apologizing profusely for his disappearance and asking for forgiveness. But his wife wasn't hearing any of it. In 1942, when Elizabeth turned 18, she moved to California to stay with her father. However, this arrangement was short-lived, as the two of them didn't get along. In September of the next year, when she was 19 years old, she was arrested for underage drinking in Santa Barbara. Elizabeth was sent back to Medford. In the winter, she moved to Miami Beach in Florida. In July of 1946, Elizabeth went to Los Angeles to visit an old boyfriend named Joseph Fickling. Fickling, however, moved to another state, leaving Elizabeth homeless and left to bounce from hotels to people's homes, making her very vulnerable. 5 months later, Elizabeth traveled to San Diego, where she met a man named Robert Manley, also known as Red, who offered to drive her to Los Angeles. The two of them stayed together in a hotel, but as Manley reports, they did not sleep together. On Thursday, January 9, 1947, Manley took her to the bus station, where she deposited her luggage, after which the two went to the Biltmore Hotel, where he left her alive and well at around 6:30 p.m. Unfortunately, even though the details are unclear, one thing is for certain. Sometime within the next 6 days, she crossed paths with a gruesome killer. On the morning of January 15, 1947, Short's naked body was found in 2 pieces on a vacant lot. Her body was found by a local resident of the area by the name of Betty Bersinger, who was walking with her 3-year-old daughter. Originally thinking that the body was just a discarded mannequin, Miss Bersinger apparently investigated further for some reason. When she saw that this was not the case, and that it was an actual human body, she responded by running to the nearest house and calling the police. The condition that the body was left in was absolute emaciation. Not only was the body cut in half, but the blood was completely drained, leaving her skin a pale white color. According to the medical examiner, Elizabeth had been dead for about 10 hours prior to being discovered. The body had also apparently been washed by the killer, no doubt as a forensic countermeasure. This guy wasn't leaving anything to chance. She had big slashes from the corners of her mouth to her ears. Back then, this method was dubbed the Glasgow smile. She had several cuts on her thigh and breasts, where entire portions of flesh had been sliced away. As if it wasn't bad enough, it gets even weirder. The lower half of her body had been positioned a foot away from the upper half, with her intestines tucked neatly under her behind. The body had been posed with her hands over her head and her legs spread apart. Also found near the body was a shoe print and a cement sack of watery blood. The Los Angeles County coroner performed an autopsy, which found that she had been tied up and possibly strangled. She also had cuts and bruises all over her body, as if there were some sort of struggle. The body had been cut completely in half by a technique taught in the 1930s called a hemicoporectomy. There wasn't much bruising around these cuts, which suggests that they were made after she was dead. Her skull was not fractured, but there was bruising noted on the front and right side of her scalp. The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be hemorrhaging from the cuts to the face and the shock from blows to the head and the face. The coroner also found evidence that Elizabeth had been raped. However, the killer was very careful because when samples were tested, the results came back negative for sperm. Short was identified after her fingerprints were sent to the FBI via sound photo, a device that transmitted images by telephone and was normally used by the media for news photos. She was accurately identified because her fingerprints were on file from her 1943 arrest. Immediately following the positive identification of the remains, reporters from the Los Angeles Examiner contacted her mother, Phoebe Short, telling her that her daughter had won a beauty contest. It was only after they had pried as much personal information as they could from Phoebe that the reporters revealed that her daughter had in fact been murdered. Yet, the reporters would apparently get more conniving. They offered to pay her way and fly her to Los Angeles, as well as her room and board under the guise that she would be helping the police with the investigation. But we soon found out this was another tactic they were using to keep her from leaking any details to competing news media, as they kept her away from the public and the police. Now, let's discuss about the investigation itself. On January 21st, a mere 6 days after her body was discovered, the editor of the Examiner received a very strange call from an unknown person claiming to be the killer. The caller began by congratulating the editor on the newspaper's coverage of the case and said that he planned on eventually coming forward. Additionally, the caller told the editor to expect some souvenirs of Beth Short in the mail. 3 days later, a suspicious envelope was discovered by a postal worker. The envelope had been addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. Additionally, a large message on the face of the envelope read, "Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." The envelope contained Short's birth certificate, business cards, photographs, names written on pieces of paper, and an address book with the name Mark Hansen embossed on the cover. The packet had been carefully cleaned with gasoline, just like Short's body, which led police to believe the packet had been sent directly by her killer. Despite the efforts the killer took to clean the packet, investigators were able to lift several partial prints from the envelope, which were sent to the FBI for testing. However, the prints were compromised on the way and thus could not be properly analyzed. The same day the packet was received by the Examiner, a handbag and a black suede shoe believed to have belonged to Elizabeth were reportedly seen on top of a garbage can in an alley not far from where Short's body had been discovered. The items were recovered by police, but they had also been wiped clean with gasoline, destroying any fingerprints. On March 14th, an apparent suicide note written with pencil and paper was found tucked in a shoe in a pile of men's clothing on the beach at the foot of Breeze Avenue, Venice. The note read, "To whom it may concern, I have waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I am too much of a coward to turn myself in, so this is the best way out for me. I couldn't help myself for that, or this. Sorry, Mary." A beach caretaker had been walking the beach one morning when he saw the pile of clothes where the suspected killer had laid them. The caretaker reported the discovery to the lifeguard captain. The lifeguard captain immediately notified the police. The clothes included a coat and trousers of blue herringbone tweed, a brown and white t-shirt, white jockey shorts, tan socks, and tan shoes. Size about 8, which is a bit small for a man. Obviously, this Hansen character, the owner of the book, became a suspect. Hansen was a wealthy man. He owned a nightclub and a theater. He also just happened to be an acquaintance at whose home Short had stayed in, and according to some sources, he also confirmed that the purse and shoe discovered in the alley were, in fact, Short's. A total of 750 investigators worked on the case during its initial stages, including 400 sheriff's deputies and 250 California State Patrol officers. They searched all kinds of places, from abandoned buildings down to storm drains and various sites along the Los Angeles River, but the searches yielded no further evidence. City Councilman Lloyd G. Davis even offered a $10,000 reward to anyone who had information that led to the killer. After the announcement of the reward, of course, various people came forward with confessions, most of which were false. Several of the people who gave false confessions were charged with obstruction of justice. The media dubbed her the Black Dahlia because of a combination of things. Around the same time, there was a movie in theaters called The Blue Dahlia, which was a film about another gruesome murder. Combine that with the fact that Elizabeth had jet black hair and her rumored penchant for sheer black clothes, and the name the Black Dahlia was born. So there you have it. Do you think Hansen had anything to do with the murder? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this video fascinating, Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more awesome stories. Thanks for watching, and see you soon in the next video.